Hello, everybody. I just thought I'd give you an update on a little project that I had mentioned a while ago about reading a bunch of French books. So I had 21 books on my bookshelf that were in French, and I wanted to read them all and get rid of them, basically. So not electronic books, but physical copies of things. Now, I've read about 13 so far, and I've got a stack of 8 or so left. Um, Things kind of changed because there was a couple that came in. People gave me extra, so a bit of a nightmare. But anyway, I just wanted to go through and show you that what type of books I'm reading. So today, this is the one I'm working on. So this is a translation of a science fiction book from Frederick Pohl, and I think the original name was Slave Ship. But anyway, this is the one I'm currently reading. Obviously, not too far into it, just a little bit, a couple of days. The last one I read before that was this one, which is quite a good book. It's a young adult book. It's written by a guy, Joseph Joffo, who was a child in the Second World War. He was a Jewish child, and he was there when the Nazis invaded Paris, and his parents sent him and his brother Maurice off alone by themselves to get away and try and get into the free zone in France. And it's basically just a story of him and his brother and how they got through the war. It's not depressed. Well, it is a bit sad, but it's not depressing or but it's a good read. Basically, it's a good read. So if you have time and you can find the book, it's worth reading. This one's obviously not a translation. It's a French book for French people. This one is the same. This is was a friend of mine bought me from France. She recommended it. It's pretty good. It's not. It was written a long time ago, back in the 50s or 60s, so it's not a politically correct book. So if you're looking for that, this ain't it. But it's a pretty good science fiction book. It's a good read if you're practicing your French. This book, I learned a lot about ice, snow, words like that, because this is all set in the Antarctic. So I learned a lot of vocabulary words related to cold, basically. Then I read this book, which is the third part of a series of a number of books, but this is the third book in the series. It's a sort of a romance, book of daring do, that sort of stuff. It's not really my cup of tea. I read it. Yeah. If you're into that sort of romance novel and heroic daring do type stuff, then this is probably the book for you. For me, it was not so great, just because it's not really my area of interest. So I wouldn't typically read this sort of book. But the other problem I have with it is this is a French book written for French adults, and the author has a wide vocabulary, which I don't. And so this set me back quite a bit. So, but it's not a bad read if you're into that sort of thing. This was another translation I read. This is Hellstrom's Hive by Frank Herbert. It's a really good book, as are pretty much every book ever written by Frank Herbert. It's worth a read in English or in any other language. But in French, it wasn't so bad because it was a translation, and I've tend to find translations. The translators tend to use more common, easier words than a native French author. But a really good book. Highly recommend it if you got time. This book, this is about reconnecting with the existence of God. It was a sort of an autobiography of a fellow who became an atheist and then sort of returned to the religion, to church. It's alright, it's not bad. It's more of an autobiography than anything else. It's not overly religious, so if you're not into that sort of thing, it's not a bad book. So we move on to this book, which honestly was a nightmare. It's originally, this is also a translation of a book called um, Arrive at Easter Wine. So this is the French version of the book Arrive at Easter Wine. And honestly, this book is just mad. um, Apparently even the English version it starts off crazy and just gets worse. But I think that was the author's intention. But I found it extremely hard to follow this book because even in the English version, a lot of the reviews, people are saying it's really difficult to follow this book because the author transitions characters from being a cat to a walrus to a giant, to a computer or whatever. It's very weird. And difficult to follow. So, and if you're trying to read it in a second language, it's extremely difficult to follow. So, I would never recommend this book in any language to anyone, but you might like it. So, have a go if you think you're hard enough, as they say. Then I got this book, which honestly is just a book about books. So, this book is literally a list of not popular, probably a bit highbrow books published after the war up until, I don't know, I think this was the 70s. 1970. So between 1945 and 1970, and it sort of goes through the list of authors and books and just a brief summary of each of the books. And honestly, it is boring. It is not. It's a reference book. It's not a novel, and it was pure and utter drudgery getting through this thing. Now here's another translation. This is actually a parallel text book of Three Men on Brunei, which is a sequel to Three Men in a Boat by Jerome K. Jerome, and it's quite funny. There are bits of it that are very funny, and it's definitely worth a read. It's public domain, so you can download the book from Gutenberg or pretty much any site that you want. It's a very, very, very good read, so I highly recommend it. Some of the other books I've given away now to my neighbor, so I don't have them available to show you. But what I do have is the books that I'm going to read next. So, this is a nightmare that I'm not looking forward to reading. It's quite a big book, it's very old-fashioned, and I just don't know if I'll be able to get through it, but I'm not looking forward to that one. This is a collection of short stories by various authors, science fiction, so this might be a bit better for me, so that one I am kind of looking forward to. This is another, it's not an old book, but it is about the sort of oldish times, so a historical novel, so we'll see how I get on with that. This is another book by Stendhal, and he really likes to write, this fella, big thick book, and it's another one of these really old-fashioned books that I'm going to struggle through. Classic literature. I don't even like classic literature in English, let alone some other language. This should be good. The Stars Are Destiny in French. So I like science fiction and fantasy books generally, so hopefully this will help me break up the monotony of all of the sort of historical stuff. And then I've got this one, which is fairly new. It looks okay. I don't know what it's about, don't have a clue, and we'll just see really how I get on. Now, two new books that came in were this one, which was given to me by my neighbor, and it's not so thick, so it might be not such of a problem, but she also gave me this thing, which is like War and Peace in small print. So this one, like the Stendhal books, I'm gonna struggle. I'm gonna struggle with these ones. But it definitely is helping my French. Now, I'm not doing this intensively, I'm doing this extensively, so I try and figure out the words from context. I'm not really looking them up if I don't have to. If I get the gist of it, then I just move on. If I have to know a word in order to understand what's happening in the story, then I stop and I do that. But otherwise, I'm just reading and learning new words from context. So this is an exercise in just learning words from context and remembering words just because they keep coming up again and again and again and again and again. Because, you know, in 21 books, common words come up commonly. So, but that's my basic update. Hopefully it was interesting and you can see what I'm doing and what I'm working on with the French reading. I'm more than halfway through now and I'm looking forward to getting to the end of it. So, thank you very much for watching and I'll see you soon.